Everything's really quiet as we start our approach on the final dungeon of the game, Hyrule Castle. Hey everyone, this is Hirotanamai 2011. Welcome back to more Let's Play Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. In the last episode, excuse me, trying to have an intro here. In the last episode, excuse me again, yeah. Nothing screams Final Dungeon than just having a giant gauntlet of enemies, huh? And those two guys spawned in if you paid close attention. Well, that guy's a jerk because now I lost my great spin. As I was saying before in the last episode, we found out, the identity of the hero shade. He's actually, Link from Ocarina of Time, who, despite doing all these great things and starting two different timelines, because he went back to time and, to his own time, and he didn't really accomplish anything, he ended up basically not being recognized as a hero in this time and ended up not being able to pass on to next life because he thought he didn't have a living legacy. Turns out he did in the form of us. So he taught us the final hidden skill, and yeah, he was able to finally move on. Now in this episode, we're tackling the final dungeon of the game, and you may notice I am not playing music over this. Well, I'll be honest. I made a note of this in the last dungeon where I said that I really like the ambience. Well, even though I love Twilight Princess's soundtrack, but I can't stand the dungeon music, I do love the Palace of Twilight because I love how atmospheric it is. I love the atmosphere of Hyrule Castle too because this dungeon, it's not just all quiet. There is music that appears later in the dungeon, but just the fact that every time you're outside in Hyrule Castle, there's just no music and it's always raining. I love that about this dungeon. Like, I cannot tell you how much I love this final dungeon. There's some things I need to get into when it comes to this dungeon, but I'll get into that when they become a bit more relevant. So, yeah, I was pointing out before when I said that, yeah, that that bird that hit me was a jerk because he got rid of my full health, meaning I couldn't use the Great Spin anymore. Yeah, that's honestly kind of relevant to what I was going to mention, that when the Hero Shade said, well, I might as well just say the Hero of Time. When the Hero of Time told us that the Great Spin can only be used when our health was brimming full, the Great Spin is literally a one-hit KO. You're going to be seeing me use this a lot during the dungeon when I have full health, because, well, yeah, being the last hidden skill, every enemy's weak to it, but again, it only works if you have full health, so I try to get it off a lot of times, and you can see why it upsets me when I can't pull off the move. Now, Hyrule Castle. Honestly, despite it seeming very simple, because it's only a few rooms, despite the rooms being very large, it's honestly a bit complex in that case too, because while the puzzles outside are relatively simple, if you're going for ow, yeah, that's not the first time that happens here, by the way. I accidentally run into a bunch of bombs because I can't control these bulbos really well. And in any case, okay, actually I think this one was my own fault. Yeah, I didn't see it. But in any case, if you're going for everything in Hyrule Castle, which is what I'm doing, yes, I missed like a treasure chest or two, but it's mostly just rupees. If you're going for everything in Hyrule Castle, you're going to end up pretty much just going through every single room in this dungeon, which it's so weird calling Hyrule Castle a dungeon, because I know it was like a dungeon in Link to the Past and everything, so that's nothing new. It's just in the context of this game, it's weird calling them. It's weird calling this place a dungeon, if you catch my drift. But yeah. So it's just kind of this place is honestly really, really huge, but it's not that bad if you're not going for everything. But again, I am going for everything. Now this room right here, I don't remember if I cut this footage, but for the life of me, I could not figure out how to do this puzzle. And it's not because I couldn't figure out the solution. The solution is actually right ahead of us. You basically, if you look closely, this area is, you know, a Triforce. And you have to, it's another Gale Boomerang puzzle, which, by the way, while not all of them, because, you know, your slingshot's still useless and everything, while this dungeon still does make implement of, like, almost all of your abilities, for the most part, I think Skyward Sword still does it better in that respect. Some of the puzzles are a bit confusing, because this one took me forever to figure out what to do. And it's not because it was complicated, it's because, well, even though they give you a clear cut on what to do for these puzzles, like, the pattern right here and everything, because a lot of the puzzles here are similar, and by that I mean it's like a very symmetrical pattern. They don't tell you what side to start off from, so I waste some time here thinking that I'm facing the right side, but it's gonna take me a few attempts to realize that I'm actually not doing this right. And I'm sorry that we keep this I keep this on screen because I was gonna edit this out, but I just said, screw it. It's the final dungeon. I might as well keep most of it raw. Although I do edit out some like failures and everything. For example, there's a hidden area which is basically the backside of Hyrule Castle, which you can see when we went to that moat area in northern Lanayru Field, and it's essentially a graveyard with the reward isn't exactly worth it, but it's worth it in the long run. Something I should bring up now is that later in the dungeon, by the end of the dungeon, you're gonna want to have an extra small key. And you'll see what I mean when we get to the end of it, because this is one of those dungeons where if you're not going for everything, you can still clear the dungeon and just continue to the final boss. But if you're going for everything, there's extra stuff you can do in this dungeon just to kind of reward you. Which, yeah, the late game game's prizes aren't exactly the best because, for the most part, it's just rupees and stuff. But, well, in this case, it's mostly just, like, it's a nice reward for going every way for stuff. And I'm turning into a wolf here because the entrance can only be found as Wolf Link, but I legitimately forgot this place was here. So unfortunately, we're going to come back to here because I forgot that that place exists. So yeah, I'm sorry I didn't cut this out, but yeah, I'll cut to when I actually complete this puzzle. Okay, so now that the puzzle's solved, and really it shouldn't have taken me that long, we now progress, and I believe that this is either a compass or the dungeon map, considering. Okay, it's the dungeon map. Hey, we went full circle. We went from me missing the dungeon map at the beginning of the game for it being the first, and now it's the first treasure chest I pick up. Hey, so we accomplished something. So in any case, yeah, so I forget this place actually exists. And I remember at like the very end. So we are gonna go to that area, but we're gonna wait to go to that area, and that camera just clipped through the bulbo. That was bad. But yeah. There's one bad thing about Hyrule Castle is that Blue Rupee! We need to get one more before the game ended. Yellow Rupee! Okay, it looks like we got both of them. So there's one thing about Hyrule Castle that honestly, it kind of is a good and bad thing when it comes to the case of Twilight Princess. It shows off what the GameCube was capable of because, well, it's one of the biggest areas in a GameCube, in terms of like Zelda Dungeon and everything, but once we hit the inside of it, you're going to see the shortcomings of it. Also, another thing about this is that basically because of this, normally, and there's another arena by the way, but normally every dungeon that you go to, it follows the whole two-room philosophy, where once you go to like, one room, like for the next two rooms, after you kill enemies, they won't come back for like a little while. And then once you enter the next room, the room that you were in 2 rooms ago, now it resets, so like all the enemies come back. Unfortunately, because of the way that this dungeon is programmed, every time you exit a room and come back, everything resets, just because everything is that big. And we have to go through another mini gauntlet again. You're starting to see a pattern here. The puzzles in Hyrule Castle aren't that complex, which is kind of strange for a final dungeon in Zelda, honestly, that is not really puzzle-heavy. This is more so combat-heavy, because it just has you fighting a bunch of the enemies from the game. And that's not bad, it's just, well, weird. There are puzzles, but they're honestly kind of relatively simple, with the exception of the optional thing that I'm doing later. And the only reason I remember it, by the way, is because I got the dungeon map. If not, I probably would have forgot the thing existed. But By the way, I also have to apologize for the noise in the background if you guys can hear it. I have my PS3 on because I'm actually playing Final Fantasy VII because I gotta admit something embarrassing. I've never beaten a Final Fantasy game. Well, at least a mainline Final Fantasy game. I've seen the entirety of 13 because honestly, screw 13. And I've beaten Bravely Default and I've beaten Crisis Core, but I've never beaten a mainline Final Fantasy game. So I want to hopefully change that with 7 now that I've actually got it. And you know, in honor of Cloud being in Smash, because I know about Final Fantasy VII in the extended universe, just not about everything else. But over here, we're gonna have a cutscene because something interesting is gonna happen. So yeah, sudden rematch with King Bulbin. Actually, the last time we'll encounter this guy in the game. Something I forgot to point out, which I don't know if I pointed out in the previous videos, he's also left-handed. It's kind of interesting, because this is the first time an enemy is left-handed, too, because, you know, usually it's only Link that's left-handed. Case in point with the Hero Shade, also. Unfortunately, the Great Spin isn't a one-hit KO on this guy, and, well, yeah, a lot of your sword techniques won't work on him. But I do like how his AI got smarter in that regard, but he's basically just a giant meat sack, pretty much, so all you gotta do is keep whacking him, and eventually you'll get this fight, no problem. Link, he spoke. Yeah, so something really interesting about the end of the game. King Bulbin talks. I bet you guys didn't see that coming. He's actually intelligent. He wasn't just a mindless grunt that was working for Ganondorf. Like he said, and sorry for the jump cut, I actually got interrupted and I paused the game for like a good 10 minutes. So yeah, something interesting about him is that he wasn't just a mindless grunt. He actually, oh, I got interrupted again. That's why we're on this red rupee, by the way. But, he's not just a mindless grunt. He, was following Zant and Ganondorf just because he thought they were the stronger side and the side that was going to win. And as soon as he realized that, no, we were going to win, he decided to join our side. So yeah, now he's good. And he also talks. So I really like that plot twist about King Bulbin, that he's actually an intelligent creature, and he wasn't just doing all this out of mindless, you know, primal ambition. Fun fact, too, in Hyrule Warriors, yeah, there are generic King Bulbin copies that show up just to represent like the big mooks from Twilight Princess. In the Twilight Princess pack, King Bulbin himself actually does show up and get a unique text box and everything, but one error that they do, and this is also attributed to some of the Twilight Princess map layout, is that he's right-handed, which is an error because, you know, you see in this game that he's left-handed. I'm sorry about fapping about here, by the way. I'm looking for that extra room because I legitimately forgot how to get to it. It's back in that wind puzzle room, if you remember. Because on the map, it's cut off because they don't tell you how to get there, but you have to get there via wolf. And that's why I'm over here fapping about, because I legitimately forgot how to do it. But, yeah, he's right-handed in that game, even though he's supposed to be left-handed. And I'm guessing it's because they basically based all the Twilight Princess stuff off the Wii version. Because if you look at the map layout of Twilight Field in Hyrule Warriors, it's almost one-to-one of how Elden Field is, especially with where the Bridge of Elden is and everything. But it's one-to-one with the Wii version, because the Bridge of Elden is all the way on the left when it should be on the right. I don't think this applies for the Palace of Twilight, because I think the Palace of Twilight, they just went with their own map design. But that kind of bothers me that they did use the Wii version, because I know that's because that's the version that was advertised, but, you know, canonically, everything is everything in the GameCube version is, the actual map layout. And over here, I cut to actually going to the next area because, yeah, again, like I said, the enemies respawn, so you don't want... So I basically had to fight all of them again. And that's one of the weird things, too, because Skyward Sword has that problem also in Hyrule Warriors, where Skyward Sword is the only Link that's canonically right-handed, or at least right-handed, but has an ambidextrous feature to him. Yet, in Hyrule Warriors, he's left-handed. And then in Hyrule Warriors, you have the left-handed Twilight Princess Link, but all the stuff in Twilight Princess is from the right-handed version. I don't know. It's kind of nitpicking at that point. But in any case, we've reached the graveyard of Hyrule Castle. Kind of morbid that there's a graveyard in a graveyard where all the monarchs meet and everything. I guess this is just where all the higher ups get buried. Which is interesting to say that, too, because one of the mechanics we see later in the dungeon, and by later I mean very later in the dungeon, is soldier ghosts. And there's a Stalfos over here as well. Like I said, the Stalfos are intimidating in this game, but honestly, they're not really a problem because, like I said, so long as... And he's just strutting over to me. So long as you have bomb arrows, or at least bombs, they're absolutely no problem because they go down in one hit. They're a reference to, I believe, the 2D Stalfos, because, in the 2D games, the Stalfos, you have to beat them up and then throw a bomb at them for them to truly go away. Otherwise, they keep getting back up. But, in this game, it's not really done that well, just because, well, you hit them with the bomb arrow and they just go down immediately. So no matter how intimidating they are, they just go away. Okay, so over here they're leaving kind of vague hints on what to do. And it's essentially you have to... Well, if I can remember what to do here, because I don't remember the footage that I recorded. This is about like a week ago. I recorded this all on New Year's Eve, by the way, just so you guys get the time frame of what I've been doing. There should be a tree that's surrounded by a bunch of soldier ghosts. And I think you have to dig there to activate a switch. But I don't exactly remember. But essentially, you have to find a way to make the rain stop because you have to light these two torches. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the soldier ghosts are all going to point towards the tree. Oh, no, towards this rock. And you have to blow up this rock to reveal a switch that can stop the rain somehow. I guess you activate a sunroof or whatever. Something interesting about the soldier ghosts, too, is that they resemble the Hero of Time as the Hero Shade. So I guess they all are, just soldiers that passed away without any real way to move on. Something interesting I should also point out about the Hero Shade that I didn't really cover when we were doing that recap video is that the Hero Shade is interesting for one reason. It's not just the fact that, he's this is the one and only time, not counting Hyrule Warriors, where Link has met another Link and had an extensive conversation, even if it's with himself. So it's technically the first time that Link has actually spoken actual words in game and all that, and you can actually hear what he's saying. But for him to pass on, he wanted to leave behind a legacy. And when it comes to the adult timeline where you have Toon Link, where he's a reincarnation, and the Hero Dies timeline where it's a reincarnation, Twilight Princess Link, he is a descendant of the Hero Shade. So essentially, the Link in this game, I said he's not directly related to him, but technically he is. We just don't know like how far apart. Meaning, at one upskirt shot. At one point, when Ocarina of Time Link comes back from Termina, he grows up, actually has sex, and then dies. And I'm not saying that to be a pervert. I'm saying that because he actually was able to technically have a family and leave behind, his bloodline to continue. And he didn't know. Now that, that makes me think, maybe he kind of pulled an Anakin Skywalker where he had a family and he just was completely unaware about it. And that's another reason why, he was so upset that he couldn't move on. By the way, these are unbreakable. But, yeah, that really makes you think. And I agree with my brother Eric where he says, he wants a game where they explain what happened to the hero of time, like a game that focuses on the war that he got killed in, and like shows like him leaving behind his legacy, even though people don't remember him. Which I guess technically, like that's like the Legend of Zelda Crisis Core, where like the hero of time is basically Zack Fair, and Twilight Princess Link is Cloud. But again, another Link versus Cloud parallel. But I'm not talking about this puzzle at all. It basically reveals these two owl statues where you have to bring these two owl statues over to these two areas, so they can create a platform so you can get back up here. This isn't the exit because you have to exit out as a wolf, but you know, the thing up here is actually really worth your time. Like I said, by the end of this dungeon, if you want everything in it, you want to have 2 small keys by the end of it, and I believe this is the small key we're talking about as soon as I open this area up. Which I find this kind of unnecessary. We already had to do all that stuff to get over here. Did you really have to include, you know, just another small switch puzzle that we had to activate? You've gotten everything you need out here, so now get in the castle through the front door. So, according to Midna, and I'm guessing that's what the game wants you to do too, yeah, you had to do this first to get the small key, so the King Bulbin stuff is actually optional. So, it's one or the other at this point, pretty much. And I really find that cool that, Hyrule Castle has all this optional stuff to do to get to the front door. But speaking of the front door, we're going to go in the next episode. See you guys then.